You are watching Frankly Speaking Sports, live from Charlotte, North Carolina. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of College Football Tuesday. I'm your host, Larry Frank, with my buddy and host, Zach McKinnell of the Blue Bloods. And Zach, want to welcome you on this, I'm going to call it another incredible Tuesday because once again, the impossible happened again. Every single week, you think that it would be easy. The teams that are supposed to win will just go out there, play and win. And every week we're finding out that more and more that a lot of these teams this year are bunched up and pretty close in competition.
Yeah, I mean, listen, like I said on our show, the only people who thought Texas A&M was going to pull off the upset this weekend were those sitting in Kyle Field, and they were the only of the most diehard fans in the country. I mean, to see that upset happen with a backup quarterback after the offseason beef that Jimbo Fisher and Nick Saban had, where Nick Saban said, yeah, you can beat me in golf, but you don't want to see me on the football field. And then on top of that, you see Iowa pull out another spectacular win, Georgia continuing their domination. I mean, this season has been absolutely just berserk in terms of the chaos that we've seen in college football. And if I told you when I came on your show the first time that Iowa and Cincinnati would be top 3 teams in the country on October 12th, I don't think you would have asked me ever to come back on your show.
Yeah, and I think it's good for college football. I mean, not having the same team. It does a couple of things. Number one, it gives you some fresh new teams and helps some of these fan bases out that may have not been attracting as much with their football program are now, filling stadiums to capacity, which only helps those schools. But number two, I'm serious, and I'm going to ask, our special guest Brent Young when he comes on about this as well. But when you start getting schools like Iowa and Cincinnati and maybe even Michigan back up there, and your Ohio State start falling out, your Clemson start falling out, your Alabama where they're maybe ranked 5 through 10, I think it opens back up the discussion on whether the playoff format should be made to 8 teams.
Yeah, and I mean, we got a comment there from Crazy Criminal Man. Shout out to him, one of all the Blue Blood's biggest subscribers. We just had a conversation on that on our channel on the mailbag, and the playoffs, I mean, are going to expand eventually. Now, it might be rolled back to, I know I was on your show when they announced the 12 teams potentially. Well, apparently that ACC, Big Ten, and a Pac-12 alliance really might roll back on 12 and maybe go to 6 or 8. But, man, when you look at college football, I know, listen, I get it. I've said it on my show, it's Georgia and everybody else. But when you go from 2 to probably 9 or 10 with Oregon or Michigan State, are you confident that any of those teams couldn't beat one another on any given day? I mean, really and truly, I mean, would you be confident right now saying that Alabama would blow out Cincinnati after watching them this weekend?
No, and I would have said that before also. I don't think there's what I call a dominant team, and the closest thing that we may have to a dominant team in football right now, in college football, might be Georgia. And we're going to continue to find out with the schedule they have, but no one else has proven that they are the dominant team, and every team has had that opportunity. And it just goes to show you, just because you're 3-2 or 4-2 doesn't mean you're a bad team. Who did you play? What was the circumstances? On any given day, you and I've talked about this quite often. On any given day, any team can beat any team. And, you're realizing that, the more these great recruiters out there start spreading the wealth around, the more talent you're going to have towards the top. And it's going to make it for a fun season. The one thing you and I have to admit, whether we like, maybe we don't like that Auburn's not there. Maybe we don't like that Arkansas is not there. Maybe we don't like that another team, Clemson, lost 2 games. But one thing we cannot deny is this year has been one of the most exciting years in college football.
Yeah, I think the last year we really saw this chaos was 2007. That's when we had a 2-loss national champion, LSU, lose to Kentucky and Arkansas down the stretch of that season, still find themselves in the playoff based on the chaos in conference championship week and win the national title with 2 losses, man. So for me, you're looking at, let's just say, is it complete? I don't think it's going to happen. But what happens if Georgia loses and now Iowa and Cincinnati are the top 2 teams in the country? And you have Bama, Oregon, Ohio State, Georgia, all these teams with 1 loss, Penn State. And you're looking there like, man, we only got 4 spots for about 8 teams that have an argument.
And this is why there is no other sport, Zach, where we can argue about factors that you lose 1 game the entire season and it could knock you out of the playoffs. That's just not right. Think about it logically. You can win 10 games, lose 1, and not make the top 4 in college football.
It's what separates college football from like all these other sports. In the NBA, you can lose like 40 games, maybe not 40. Potentially, but you can lose 30 games in the NBA and still probably be a top 6 seed. You can lose like 80 games in the MLB and still be in the playoffs. You can lose. We've seen teams lose 9 games in the NFL and be in the playoffs. In college football, 1 bad weekend, 1 bad game could cost you your season. And I think that's what makes it so electric and so different from any other sport in the country so far.
And before we get to the top 25 and then recap some of the games, tell the fans out there, Zach, when you get a team like Cincinnati, who's in the
It's the AAC, yeah.
AAC. I almost said ACC. AAC, the American Athletic Conference. Let me ask you this. What does it do for that conference when you have a team that is battling for a playoff position that's coming from your conference?
Yeah, it does a lot because, one, it gives those teams in the conference, a target. You're like, man, every single game they play, that, UCF this week, Gus Malzahn and those Black Knights are probably like, man, look at the opportunity we have to be the number 3 team in the country. And on top of that, recruits are going to start looking at the overall strength of the conference as, okay, well, we can go out here and win a national title here. So the UCFs, the SMUs, the Memphises, they all benefit from a team in that conference, doing that well. And then also a close loss to a number 3 team, you get the teams like SMU that are going to be ranked with 1 loss. You're gonna get the Memphises that sneak into the back end of the top 25. Then you're looking at the AAC having 3, 4, 5 ranked teams. That's the goal, but it brings up the conference as a whole, and that's why the AAC cannot allow Cincinnati to. They have to find a way to replace Cincinnati because they're headed to the Big 12. So is UCF. Right. So they're going to have to replace those top teams and or suffer a small setback in terms of overall perception of the conference. But Cincinnati doing this, man, I don't think people can really wrap their minds around how much it does for the conference as a whole in terms of money, TV revenue. If Cincinnati's not number 5, let's say they're unranked, how many viewers do you think Cincinnati UCF's getting on Saturday? A few 100,000 maybe?
Right.
Yeah, maybe over just maybe a small million. But because Cincinnati's playing and people are tuning in to see them, that UCF Cincinnati game might do 3-4 million. in terms of TV eyes. So that's the difference. And the ticket revenue. The UCF fans are going to travel because they want to see their team knock off number 3. The Cincinnati fans are going to show up because they want to see their national championship contending team play. So on all fronts, money, exposure, recruiting, it improves the conference as a whole.
Now, before we get to the recap, some of these games that we talked about last week, let's go to the top 25. The only thing that I saw, and we could argue where Ohio State should be Michigan be up, and I think we're going to answer a lot of those questions this weekend when these games play out. But my question, the only thing I was surprised out is Baylor isn't in the top 25. They're 5-1. Do you think Baylor is a top 25 team?
Man, you see, how are you going to make me call out like a whole fan base or something like that? Because if Baylor's top 25, then someone else can't be top 25. So let's take it like this, man. Let's look at the bottom half. Let's look at 20 through 25, all right? Because that's where it's going to be. Baylor is ranked behind Auburn and Clemson, too, in terms of other receiving votes. Kind of ridiculous to put them behind Clemson. I'm an Auburn fan, but Auburn's 2 losses are to Penn State on the road and Georgia. Pretty good losses, I would have to say, but we'll keep that in our pocket. But Texas, their 2 losses are to Arkansas and Oklahoma. Yeah. So they have 2 really good losses. They got some solid wins. So right now, I think it's a toss up between Baylor, Texas, and the committee's probably saying they're going to have to play. So that doesn't really matter. San Diego State's undefeated. You've been a big San Diego State supporter, so if you're undefeated, you have an argument to be ranked above a 1-loss Baylor team. Then you got an undefeated SMU team. They probably deserve to be ranked above Baylor, being undefeated and doing their part of the season. Then you have NC State at 4-1. They have 1 loss to Mississippi State. They got the big win over Clemson. So I think you have an argument that they have a single better win than Baylor has on their resume, and they possibly could be the better 1-loss team. Got no problem with that. Then the other 2 teams that are ahead of them, 4-2 Florida and 4-2 Texas A&M. So for me, A&M has the better win. You got to put them above them. I mean, when you beat Alabama, man, we got to make the argument that they deserve to be up there. And then Florida, their 2 losses are to undefeated Kentucky and Bama. So it's like, who do you put them over? And Baylor's schedule, like Crazy Criminal said, isn't that strong, but they're going to have a chance to prove it. Listen, one of the games we're previewing on our channel that I'm so excited to see is Byu Baylor this weekend. Right. That's going to be a huge test. Baylor has to win. The 1 ranked team Baylor's played, they lost by 10 to Oklahoma State. And they get Texas, they get Oklahoma. They have chances to prove that they're good. The thing about Baylor is they haven't beaten any quality opponents, and the 1 quality opponent they had, they lost. And so that's what's keeping Baylor out of the top 25, in my opinion.
All right, well, let's go to some of these games. For those of you folks joining us, first of all, Zach and I want to thank you very much. We are about 15 minutes away from Aaron Brent Young. He covers the Cincinnati Bearcats. He also does Indiana football. He's a play-by-play broadcaster for football. So he's joined us before when I was doing my college football show, and we're very happy to have him again. Also, for those of you that are watching, if you can share this to your timeline, I know a lot of you get to see this show on the replay, but even the replay, it still helps us if you can go ahead and definitely share this. I mean, I'm not trying to be funny or hypocritical in any way, but it's a great show. It's a great show. We get a lot of positive feedback on it, and people like it. And, one of the games this weekend, Texas A&M or Alabama, and I remember discussing with you this, and I said, Alabama should win this game. You and I both agreed with that last week, and it just goes to show you that there's a reason. But when you look at this game, with the exception of being Jumbo Fish's 56th birthday, I'm catching him in age. This was the first time Alabama lost since 2019. For those of you folks that didn't get to see the game, Seth Small hit a 28-yard field goal to win it as time expired. Alabama had scored 21 unanswered points in this game. I believe they were, the thing with Alabama that I saw in this game is, first of all, Zach Kazanda, I thought, showed a lot of poise in this game, bringing his team back with a couple of clutch throws. But Alabama, it almost seemed like when I looked at this game, I think A&M led 24-10 at halftime. But when you look at this game, I just thought that it almost was like Alabama was creating their own issue. I mean, in that first half, what they do, turn over the ball twice. Texas A&M took a big lead, and it just didn't feel like a lot of penalties in the game for usually a well-disciplined coach Alabama team, but they seem like they didn't do enough to win this game.
Yeah, and this is something I criticized them for, and I don't have a lot. Listen, Bama's gonna be fine, guys. Bama's not overrated. It's not this; they're gonna be fine. But the problem was, even though they put over 500, put up over 500 yards of total offense, we got to start talking about, and this has to be a narrative because it's becoming repeated, and it's a pattern, beyond week 1 or 2. Outside of the playmakers of the big three for this offense, their lack of execution in crunch time is really bad. I'll look at 2 drives, man. The drive early in the fourth, Bama's down by 4. They push the ball to the 3-yard line, and instead of trusting Brian Robinson, which is one of the most consistent running backs in college football,
147 yards. Yep.
Yeah, and that offensive line that you've recruited, and you've got some monstrous men on that offensive line, you throw the ball 3 straight times and settle for a field goal instead of trying to take the lead by doing what you do best. And then you have to kick a field goal to still be down by 1.
So, Zach, what's the point? What is the point there when they're at they have goal to score at the 3-4 yard line? You got Robinson who's rushed for 147 yards. He's pounding that rock. Why the hesitation in letting him? What do you think? If you're trying to look in the mind of probably the best coach in college football, what is he thinking there?
Saban doesn't call the plays, but Bill O'Brien just tried to get too fancy. He thought that, getting it to his playmakers on the outside, letting Bryce Young make a play was a better choice, and it ended up not being a better choice, and it doesn't make sense. A&M's strength is their secondary. So why not control the line of scrimmage like you have the ability to do as Alabama? And then the other drive, man, the potential game-winning drive with 3 minutes left in the game. You got one drive, you drive down, get a field goal or a touchdown to win it. They gained 1 yard in 52 seconds and punted the ball back to A&M, which led to the game-winning drive. You're telling me you couldn't get more than 1 yard in a crucial situation to go win the football game? That said everything I needed to know about the execution. And outside of Bryce Young, Brian Robinson, and Jamison Williams, do you trust anyone to go out and make a play for this Bama offense? They have no depth at running back, and that's an issue. Jace McClellan hasn't developed, and a bunch of those young guys they have behind him haven't really stepped up in crunch time. They're going to have to get a rotation at the running back spot for me. And also on top of that, Mechie and those other wide receivers are going to have to help Jamison Williams out. Jamison Williams can't do it all by himself. And so that's something I want to look for. But listen, this game all lies on Zach Calzada and how well he played. He came out and hit his first 16 passes, man.
Yep.
Against a very good Bama defense. Zach Calzada won this game. And on top of that, you've got to give the playmakers for A&M some credit. Anaya Smith on that last-second touchdown, getting all that separation. You also had Jalen Wademeyer being himself, and then the run game was shut down, man. But Devin Akane, the backup running back, took that 96-yard kickoff to extend that lead in the third quarter back up to 2 touchdowns. Ended up being one of the big differences in the game. A&M's playmakers made plays when they were needed. Losing Malachi Moore on that targeting call was huge for Alabama in that game, losing a critical piece of that secondary. So for me, A&M made the plays to win the game, and Bama did not execute down the stretch. And so that's what happens, man. Like we say on this show, any given Saturday, if you don't execute, you're going to beat and executed on a higher level than Alabama this weekend.
Yeah, and Jamison Williams, like you said, 10 catches, 146 yards, 2 touchdowns. But, sooner or later, when you're targeting after one guy and just throwing the ball to one receiver or just handing off, like you said, to one running back and you have no depth, it's a lot easier to contain that individual person. We're going to move on. A game and that I actually picked, and I'm proud of myself, and I'm so glad Iowa shows how good they really are. Penn State, whatever we want to say, they're a good defensive team. But this game, I can tell you, was not won by Iowa. It was lost by Penn State. They had 4 key turnovers in this game, which really was the difference in this game. When you look at this game, I mean, nothing stands out as far as statistically except the 4 turnovers. But give Iowa credit. We knew it was going to be a lower scoring game like this, but you're not going to win when you turn the ball over 4 times.
No, and I mean, let's be honest, man. How different would this game be if Sean Clifford doesn't go down with an injury early in this game? I mean, Penn State was in a position to win this game, and Sean Clifford's injury changed everything. When you look at what happened when Clifford went down, man. So, looking at Robertson, who came, it was Taquan Robertson was the backup quarterback. He came in with 7 for 21, 34 yards and 2 picks. So what happened is Iowa, at the beginning of the game, Iowa had to respect Clifford's deep ball. So they were out of the box, and Penn State was able to move the ball here or there. But once Clifford went out, they knew Robertson couldn't push the ball down the field. So what you saw was they said, we're going to load the box. We're gonna play man up at the back end, and we're going to make you beat us. And they didn't have the athletes to beat them, and they didn't have the quarterback to push the ball down the field. And Iowa runs a lot of cover too. They run a lot of just discipline, like you're going to have to make smart decisions and put the ball into smart places. And they didn't have to do that again. All they said was, you can't throw the ball deep. We're going to load the box and stop the run. And Penn State had no answer. And as much flack as Spencer Petras gets at quarterback for Iowa, the one throw he had to make all game to the tight end, he nails it for the game-winning touchdown. You got to give him credit, even though I was not flashy, even though I was not pretty, they're going to win the game because what they're going to do is they're going to stick to their game plan. They're going to be more physical than you. They're going to win the time of possession, which they did this weekend, and they're just going to play tougher than you. And they're going to execute on an extremely high level. The thing about that secondary, they get 4 picks again. I got a crazy stat for you. I brought it just for this show, man. They intercepted 8.9% of the passing attempts against this defense this weekend. The national average is 2%, and they're averaging almost 5% interception on 5% of the passes against them, dude. I don't think people understand how elite that is. They don't have the best athletes. What they do is they just execute at such a high level that when you make a mistake, because they execute consistently, they're in the right place to make the play every single time. And that's the difference. I want to give a shout out. Riley Moss and Matt Hankins, the 2 corners for Iowa, have been I think them and the Georgia cornerback duo with Ringo and the kid from Clemson. I'm blanking on his name right now for some reason. De'Aaron Kendrick for Georgia. Kendrick and Ringo and Hankins and Moss are the best 2 cornerback duos in the country. And so for me, I think by far and away, this just proves that I was legit, man. And I'm worried about their offense moving forward. Don't get me wrong, because you're going to have to score to beat a Georgia, to beat a Cincinnati, to beat a Oklahoma, someone like that. But for me, they do it their way. Kirk Ferentz has been doing this for years, and you have to give props where props are due. They played an outstanding game this weekend, and I am so impressed as Iowa just keeps finding ways to win.
Yeah, it's incredible. Now, the next 2 games that we're going to talk about were unbelievable games. I mean, you want to talk about excitement. I mean, when you talk about 1,300 yards in total offenses between these 2 offenses, the game decided on a 2-point conversion that failed by Arkansas. And I'll tell you right now, for all the Arkansas fans that are listening on this show tonight, and I know we have some, I'm going to tell you, Sam Pittman made the right call. I would have done the same exact thing. There's people that will argue that with me. Hey, you're on the road. Should we go for the win? Do you go for the tie and bring it into overtime? Sam Pittman had faith in his team. If he had to do it all over again, I think Sam Pittman would make that same call. But a couple things I learned in this game. First of all, KJ Jefferson was awesome. Matt Corral was awesome. And I'm going to tell you, every week we keep hearing Matt Corral. The guy continues to impress. He had 2 touchdowns. But the impressive part about Matt is he doesn't make a lot of mistakes. He has the poise that you need to play that position. But KJ even threw for 326 yards. He ran for 3 touchdowns. He passed for 3 touchdowns. I mean, overall, this, 350 yards rushing for Arkansas, 324 yards rushing for, Mississippi. This was if you love scoring, this was a game that you would have enjoyed.
Yeah, I actually had to watch the replay of this game because we were down in Huntsville for the A&M Jackson State game. But man, I was on my phone just looking like, man, who's going to be able to pull this one out? I think you saw one that Arkansas is legit. I don't think if I told you that Ole Miss scored 52 points, you'd be like, well, damn, Arkansas got the doors blown off. They allowed 52 points to Ole Miss. And for Arkansas to go up and put 51 is so impressive. And you got to give KJ Jefferson his props, throwing for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. Yeah. And honestly, playing right up to the Corral standard. It just happened to be that Snoop Connor and Paris Jr., the running backs for Ole Miss, just made play after play after play. And when you look at that second quarter, that's when Ole Miss really sealed the game. That they had 3 big touchdowns that really took over this game. And so for me, I think it was not an indictment, but it was a tough loss for Arkansas. They should have won this game, man.
Yeah.
And you look at the 2-point conversion call. I have no problem that you went for it, but man, what was the execution on that call? You had to have some high percentage play that you could run compared to what they ran. So for me, I like the decision to go for it. I didn't like the play call, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes 100% sense. And I was going to say the same thing. It was the play call. I mean, and you know what? They obviously thought they had something. They didn't. It didn't work. But like you said, this is probably by far the best 4-2 team in college football right now. I mean, they are a good team. The other game, give props to Oklahoma. I was rooting for Texas in this game. What a great comeback from Oklahoma in this game. Spencer Rattler, who was the Heisman candidate at the beginning of the year, was benched for Caleb Williams. Did an adequate enough job to get them fired up, and they ended up winning. Xavier Worthy, 9 receptions. Listen to that, 261 yards receiving and 2 touchdowns. Oklahoma, 662 yards. But the most impressive stat, 9 of 19 on 3rd down. And this is a game where Oklahoma was trailing 38-20 and 28-7 after the first quarter. What a great. I mean, at the beginning of this game, if I would have told you, you would have just said, turn the TV off. There is no way Oklahoma came to play today. And they give kudos where kudos is deserved. Oklahoma with a great comeback. And it was nice to see, Kennedy Brooks go off for 2 touchdowns, 217 yards as well.
Yeah, I mean, for me, listen, you have to give some type of credit for Lincoln Riley making the decision to move off of Spencer Rattler. And you look at Caleb Williams, can we give some credit to him? I mean, to come into this type of environment for your first ever action on the college stage and put together 6 scoring drives on 7 total drives and lead your team back into contention and win the game, you got to give this kid all the props in the world. He had 300 yards of total offense, 3 touchdowns, and he looked so cool and composed in the pocket as a true freshman in his first ever college football action. You got to give him all the props in the world. Like you said, Kennedy Brooks finally showed why he's one of the best running backs in the country. And an interesting storyline. So it kind of came out that Oklahoma has been holding Gray and Brooks back because they're the only two scholarship running backs that were healthy. They got a third running back this weekend, and that's what Kennedy Brooks goes out and does when he gets the opportunity. So you just have to look at this team and be like, man, with Williams' dynamic ability through the air and with his legs and Brooks on the ground, what could this team be if this defense could just get a stop here or there? You got to give Lincoln Riley all the credit in the world. They were dead. They were dead to right for Texas. I believe it was 41-23 in the late third quarter. And they came all the way back to win with a true freshman quarterback. Lincoln Riley made that Nick Saban-esque decision to bench that, incumbent guy that had all the hype for the true freshman, knowing that it just caught him off guard. And I don't think Texas is a bad team because as anyone who knows football knows, all you have to do, you don't prepare for the backs. A back quarterback comes in, they usually have a lot of success because the defense isn't schemed for that. And so it throws the whole game plan also. I think Texas will be fine, but you got to give all the flowers to Caleb Williams and Lincoln Riley for making that decision and executing down the stretch.
Real quickly before we get Brent Young on, what happens now? Okay, Caleb comes in, has an incredible showing. What do you say? 6 of 7 possessions. They come back, they win an unbelievable game. Who quarterbacks
now? Okay. Personally, I don't think you have any justification to go back to Rattler. After what Caleb did this weekend, how do you look at your team in the face and say the best person to give us a chance to win is Spencer Rattler? I mean, he struggled against West Virginia. He struggled against Tulane at times. Caleb Williams has to get the start next week. And, as much as I hate to say it, Rattler's probably in the transfer portal by, in a few weeks.
And this is why I hate the transfer portal. You know that. Because this is what happens. You take a kid who beats him out, who helps his team, and all the guy says, okay, the hell with competition. I'm going to go somewhere else rather than working my ass off. Excuse my language. We'll do a beep on that. But to go out there and work harder to become better, he goes somewhere else so he can play.
Yeah, and I mean, listen, okay. Let's just put it in a little bit of perspective. Losing a job like this is tough. And it's like, do you want the kid to sit on the bench and fight for something that it probably isn't? Like, it's different for fighting for something that's up for grabs. But after what Williams did, there's nothing to fight for unless he opens up the job again, because I don't think there's a QB battle right now. There's nothing to fight. It's just Williams right now just might be the better player. So why not go get some playing opportunities somewhere where you'll be the best player? And if you're Rattler, you went from potentially first overall pick in the draft to your bench on October.
Yes.
Exactly. Talk about an absolute whirlwind of a career in just a few weeks for that kid. I'm hoping he goes. I would love to see him follow. If James Franklin leaves Penn State or stays, I would like to see him go to that James Franklin offense. I personally would love to see him in a James Franklin system, whether that be at LSU, USC, or potentially staying at Penn State. I think that would be a great spot. I also really like the idea of going to follow up Sam Howell at UNC. Mac Brown has shown he can put quarterbacks in the NFL. Why not go play in that offense and, go into an ACC conference that is I guess for the taking. And that comment by Crazy Criminal down below, Rattler's attitude really rubbed some teammates the wrong way. I don't know if you saw this. He did not stay on the field to celebrate with his teammates. He went straight to the locker room after the game and was caught on camera walking straight to the locker room. He's in no post-game videos, nothing like that. And so his attitude, I think, lost the locker room. So even if you wanted for him to stay and fight, I think he might have already lost the team.
Yep. Now let's go ahead. I'm just going to take a couple things down before we get Brent on here. Let's do that. Okay. And we talk about there's still some undefeated teams, and you're talking about a guy who had an opportunity just now and might have lost that opportunity or for a little bit going to the NFL. But one guy that keeps proving he's getting better and better and better every week has to be Desmond Ritter of the Cincinnati Bearcats. And it's a great honor, thrill, and pleasure at this time to bring in a contributor for BearcatJournal.com, and he's also sports broadcaster for IndianaSRN.org. Let's welcome in Brent Young. Brent, how you doing today? Well, let's get you up here first. There you are. How you doing today, buddy?
Doing great, guys. Doing great. How are you guys doing?
We're doing
Good,
great.
man.
Thank you very, very much for coming on today. And we're talking about, let me ask you this. You and I've talked, I think it was last year, Brent, but,
Right.
we talk different sports and stuff, you and I. If I would have told you, now we knew Cincinnati was good. I don't think there's any question or was any question that they were a good competitive team.
Right.
But did you ever in your wildest dreams, with about 7 games left in the season, think that they would be basically controlling their own destiny for a playoff spot?
If you would have told me that 4 years ago, I would have said no way, absolutely no chance. Just coming off the Tommy Tuberville era, obviously a weird finish to that one, and then Luke Fickell's first season, another losing season. So, I would have said no. I think you're a little crazy, Larry. I'm being a little honest with you. I think you're a little crazy out here. But the more and more that I've seen, and I hate the word culture because everyone uses it, but that's what it is. The culture change in Cincinnati and the way that everything has been able to kind of lead to a winning mentality and setting goals that are accomplishable and then reaching those goals pretty much every single year. I think if you would have told me that probably last year or 2 years ago, I would say, okay, I could possibly see it. I think a road victory at Notre Dame Stadium with they won 26 in a row there. I think that would have been a little far-fetched, but yet again, I would have said yes. I could see with the remaining games on the schedule, I could see them controlling their own destiny with a chance at the college football playoff. So, it's just the way that things have been there. It is a strange, confident feeling, a very veteran laden team. And you mentioned Desmond Ritter. When you've got a guy like Desmond Ritter, the all-time winningest quarterback active right now, and has a chance to be out there within the top 5 past Peyton Manning and a couple other really big names, then you really have a team that can accomplish a lot of things, and they have a lot of goals set in front of them, and I really think that they can achieve them.
You talked about balance of year, Brent, and when you look at this schedule, they got obviously UCF, which you and I both have learned over the past couple of years, you never take anything for granted,
Right.
Especially this year in college football. But you got UCF, Navy, Tulane, Tulsa, University of South Florida, SMU, which is undefeated right now, and then East Carolina. Obviously, SMU is going to be a tough game for them. But when you look at this schedule compared to some of the other teams in that top 10, they may have one of the most favorable schedules of anyone right now. The balance of year.
Yeah, I think they do. It's definitely the most favorable. It's one where everyone brings up style points and the way you look when you win these games. That yes, that might not be a factor for coaches and certain players on the team that want to just win the game. If we win the game, it's a win in their eyes and one step closer to a championship. But yes, style points, because it comes down to human decision when it comes to the college football playoff. It's not computers. It's not anything like that. So eye tests and style points will be big. So yes, it's a very favorable schedule for them to win every game, but the way that they win is going to be just as important as if they win. Because you mentioned that SMU game. SMU's got a tough road game at Houston before that. So if they can win at Houston, Houston's been really good. They had one slip up against Texas Tech. If they didn't, they'd be undefeated as well right now, and you'd be looking at probably an undefeated matchup between them and SMU here in a couple weeks. But yeah, it's a schedule that's lined up really strongly for the Bearcats to run the table. But yes, tough game against SMU. UCF isn't as good as they were projected to be at the beginning of the season. A lot of injuries have really hurt them and Gus Malzahn's first season. But I mean, if you take a tough SMU team and say that Houston maybe beats SMU at home, and you're looking at Houston in the AAC championship game, that could be another big barometer test. And then how you look in those, it's just really how the committee sees it after that.
Luke Fickell. I'm stuttering on my words. I apologize for that. What has he done for this program? I mean, obviously the success that you have in, obviously it's the execution on the field and the players. But talk about his leadership and his style and what it's done for the program.
So, one of the things that his entire staff did when they first came in, it was just these concentration tests and different, taking them out into the winter and doing bear crawls in the mud and, just trying to test them to their limits and see, hey, how hard can we push ourselves to bring out our God-given talent and maximize that to its best ability. And so he's a guy that comes in, he says something, and then he means it. And he's going to show you that he means it every single day. His motto is always, team, TEAM, together, everyone achieves more. And he lives that every single day. And it's a real brotherhood. And you talk to any player, any recruit, anyone about Luke Fickell, and they're going to tell you he's just an extremely genuine guy. And, you talk to him and he's just like that uncle that you love talking to, that you can't wait to see at family reunions and you wish you would see a little bit more, but you can't see him as often as you want to. But he's a guy that really just models everything that he says by the actions that he does, not just, it's just not blank words. And he's a very down-to-earth guy as well, but he's going to bring the most out of you. He's going to recruit as hard as he possibly can. And then on top of that, he's going to develop as best as he can. He is a really, really, really good football coach and an even better person. And I think that's really why a lot of players kind of gravitate to him, because he's kind of has that dad side to him, 6 children. He is the ultimate coach, the ultimate leader that you want in front of a team.
Now, you mentioned Desmond Ritter earlier when we were talking. 1,300 yards, 12 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. When you look at Desmond, and, we heard all this hype at the beginning of the season. We were talking about this, Zach and myself, earlier in the show. We heard about Spencer Riddler of Oklahoma.
Rattler, yeah.
I'm sorry, Rattler. I'm getting everybody. I'm twisting everything up here. Rattler. I got Ritter, Rattler,
Yeah.
But when you looked at that and he had all the hype, how would you compare Desmond to on a national basis, on the current college quarterbacks that are playing?
And I hate to just say it's kind of cliche, but he's a winner, and that sometimes is not measured by stats. It's not measured by how many passing yards or passing touchdowns he has. It's more just measured by wins. I mean, he's the active winningest quarterback in the entire country in all of college football. He trailed only Trevor Lawrence last year. And he is someone that's going to end up in the top 5 all-time winning quarterbacks. He's going to pass Peyton Manning. Kellen Moore kind of has an impossible feat to touch, but aside from that, it's he does the winning things needed. And this season is the first full season he's kind of put together, his passing ability. His deep ball has been on fire recently. He met with Jordan Palmer over the offseason, the quarterback guru out there in California, and he kind of taught him some mechanics that he needed to fix and some certain things he wanted to focus on, and he's definitely taken that to heart. And he's graduated already. He's finished everything needed. So it's kind of like this season with some other classes that he has to take in order to be the student. He's really kind of just morphing himself into a full-time football player and trying to learn everything that he can do to get better in every facet of the game. I think, his passing ability has really, really gotten a lot better, especially his deep ball. Him and Alec Pierce, who's our number 1 wide receiver, he's really been on fire the last couple of games. And, once he has all these new tools around him, all these new pieces, he's able to spread the wealth, and he's doing it at a very high clip right now.
Going to go ahead and let Zach go ahead and jump in there, buddy.
Yeah, man. So on our show, I've been called the Ahmad Gardner fan club. That's
Beautiful.
I've said that he's the best corner in the country, and I don't even think
Yeah.
it's a conversation. I think he's better than Stingley, Ricks, whoever you want to put up against him. That's how good he is. Speak on what you see from him just on a day-to-day basis. What makes him the leader of that defense, and why do you think he's so underrated? Because when you look at the stats, it's not even a question about how talented Ahmad Gardner is at cornerback.
So the main thing was Sauce, and we all call him Sauce over there. Ever since the the Central Florida game, and in 2019 we had the pick six in front of a Nip at Night. He earned the name Sauce, and now actually on the University of Cincinnati, go Bearcats.com, the official website, it is Ahmad Sauce Gardner is his official name on there. So, but the thing that he needed to do is, so he came in long and lean, and kind of just had a frame that you could do something with, but he was just an overall skinny person when he first came in. And, so strength coach Brady Collins, who has just done a phenomenal job at Cincinnati, he kind of showed Sauce. He said, okay, look, so you've got the height, 6'2", 6'3", 6'4" sometimes, depending on where you look. But, all these guys are over 200 pounds. They're sitting in between that, 198 to 210. And Sauce took it upon himself this summer to get bulked up, jacked, and not lose any speed. And he's looking like the true NFL caliber cornerback right now. And what teams have done this season is they do not even throw to him. They throw at his way at all. He might have 2 or 3 targets come his way a game, and might give up 1 or 2 catches for 9 yards. And the greatest stat that he has is, in all the coverage snaps that he's had and all the targets that have come his way, he's allowed 0 touchdowns against him, and he scored 2 touchdowns himself. So it's one of those just crazy mind-boggling things where, I think it's his length that really befuddles quarterbacks, because you might think your wide receiver has a step or two, but then Sauce could catch up and uses his long arms to either deflect the pass or get in the way of it some way. So I think he's underrated just because of the whole stigma that comes with Cincinnati, and I'm sure you guys see it more on the outside, just kind of the whole group of 5, Power 5 talk, and how could this cornerback at Cincinnati be better than this cornerback at LSU or this cornerback at Iowa? And I think when you look at tape and you start to hear what other people are saying, is he's just as good, if not better, than those guys. And I think you're going to see it on Sundays, because he has that press man coverage, that ability to just glue on you. And if you do get a step, that ability to catch up and use his length to really make it hard to catch the ball. So I think I'm part of the fan club too. Big time part of it.
Yeah, I was disappointed, man. That George Pickens Sauce matchup last year could have been. That was like golden NFL tape. But hopefully, we'll see. We might see some matchups later in the year. Yeah. But the other thing is, Luke Fickell has probably been mentioned with every head coaching job, and will be for at least however long he stays at Cincinnati. Let's just say that. Right. LSU's already talking about him. USC's already talking about him. Right. And any job that opens will. The move to the Power 5 is imminent. You guys are going to the Big 12 in a few years. Does that lock him down? Was that the selling point that other teams were using? And do you think, because Cincinnati chose to make that move, that it was the ability to lock down Fickell long term? Because now he doesn't have to leave to compete for a national title. And now not only is he doing it now, he'll be in the Big 12 where he can do it every year.
Yeah, definitely. The thing about Luke is, he is someone that openly admits that he lives under a rock during football season, and during the off season, he's recruiting and trying to do all he can to help the betterment of his team. It's widely, speculated he doesn't have an agent, or his agent is his wife, Amy, or, it's just different things of this sort. But yeah, of course, these talks are going to come back to him. He was asked about the USC, talk earlier during a press conference, and he said, you know what? All it is right now is it's flattering to hear. It is a proof of what we have been able to do as a football program and how we've been able to build and achieve, and he said, I love it, because it just means we're doing something right. If you aren't hearing all of these teams coming after you, or teams offering to give you this or that to to come to their program, that means that you aren't doing as good of a job as you can do. But I also think he's someone that really likes Cincinnati and the situation that's there. He's got all these children, only one of them is in college, one in high school. It's kind of spread out where they're all younger, and he's got a lot of things situated in Cincinnati, and he's building this to something that it really can be. And as you mentioned with the Big 12, it opens up many doors that are originally closed due to the the Power 5 Group of 5 thing, and which is a thing that he never mentions. He says we don't talk about P5 or G5. We don't do any of that stuff. But now he can, and it's just the money that it'll bring in, the ability to potentially build an entire football facility, potentially use more money towards recruiting and different things of that sort. It's going to open up a lot of doors. And I mean, the way that he's been able to build it up to this point, you add the Big 12 on top of that, I don't think he's looking to go anywhere anytime soon, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I completely agree. That's why we had a live show right before this, and someone asked me, and I was like, Luke Fickell's not going anywhere now that Cincinnati's going P5. But the other question is, man, this is my last one. The odds of Cincinnati getting in the playoffs are at an all-time high. I believe the FPI has it at like 30 or 40% right now.
Right.
You guys sneaking in. And there's still some games where Iowa could lose down the stretch, and Georgia's got some tough games where we could be talking about Cincinnati potentially being the number one team in the country, which that doesn't even sound right coming out of my mouth if I'm really being honest. But what would a national championship run, just a playoff appearance, but let's go all the way. What would a national championship do for Luke Fickell and Cincinnati as a whole?
So coming into the season, Luke talked about how this is a top 10 team, but we want to make this be a top 10 program. It's two different things. And I think that if he's able to get to a national championship or get to the college football playoff or heck, even win the whole thing, it's going to do everything for the program. It's going to be a monster step in the right direction where, I mean, they're talking to a number of really, really big time recruits. They've got a long list of recruits coming in this Saturday for the UCF game. And, the fact that they were able to go to Notre Dame, win that game on the road, snap their 26-game winning streak. Well, Notre Dame had a huge visitor list in that game as well. What did the staff do after that? Reached out to those guys and said, hey, we were there on Saturday too. That was pretty fun, wasn't it? And see where that goes from there. But if they were able to do that, I think first off, it cements Desmond Ritter as one of the greatest, if not the best, Cincinnati Bearcat football players of all time. I think it would cement Luke. You could start building Luke's statue out in front of Nippert Stadium. I know it's only year what 5 or 6, but still, you can do it. I give them permission to do that, but all it's going to do is just continue to open up doors because you go all over social media. It's just everyone trying to pick and prod their way to finding a reason why they can't just say that Cincinnati is extremely talented. Cincinnati has 8 potential NFL draft picks on their team, maybe even more.
Yep.
They finally are getting the NFL scouts at their games this season. And now we'll see what happens when you finally get NFL scouts in front of the games to see these players play. I think it's just going to really just do nothing more but continue the exposure for the program. And I think it'll make Luke see just, hey, I want to set all these goals for myself and I want to achieve all of them as well. And his goals are, becoming a top 10 program and winning championships, whether it's, conference championships or whatever games in front of them. And if that's the national championship, then it's going to be a very, very big momentum swing in their way.
Absolutely, man.
Yeah, last question for me. We talked about not overlooking UCF, obviously, this week. I know there's a huge type of enthusiasm and confidence with the Bearcats in Cincinnati right now. What do they need to do this Saturday to make sure they don't have a letdown? And what do you look for in this game, Brent?
So it was kind of the same thing for Temple. And Temple's obviously UCF is way better talent-wise. Talked about them on their team. But Temple was a team that just came off beating Memphis. Memphis beat, Mississippi State. Mississippi State beat Texas A&M. Texas A&M, we all saw what they did this past Saturday if you're into that transitive property thing. But, it was more don't let down against Temple, where in my eyes it was more of just don't let Temple hang around the game. Treat Temple the way that a top 5, top 3 team now should treat Temple. I think the same thing could be said for UCF, because even though UCF's got all these injuries and they're without Dylan Gabriel, it's a real big step back for them. It's still a team that wants to come in, and they were once the top dog, and now they see Cincinnati as the top dog, and this is a grand stage on ABC to really take down a top 3 team, and they've got talent. They do. So I think the main thing would be just to continue to focus on what they do, play extremely aggressive on defense, and then take shots when you can on offense. If not, just set up the run and let Dez get into his comfortable stance back there in the pocket as well. I think that they should win the game, and I think relatively easily if they play that the way they should. But I think that they're so laser focused and they're so just veteran driven. I mean, they've got about 6 or 7 of their starters are 6-year, COVID seniors, if you will. So this is a extremely experienced team, a defense that has seen all different kinds of offenses, and then a quarterback who is, as veteran can get in the game right now. So I think just continue to doing what you do, and just continue that laser focus, because they are locked in, and I have really never seen the team as locked in as they are.
Well, listen, Brent, as always, I want to thank you, both myself and Zach want to thank you very much for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us on our College Football Tuesday show.
Thank you. And you know what? You guys are doing a great job. I was able to listen to a little bit there about the Oklahoma talk. Oklahoma, Texas, man, that's a high-scoring affair right there. I tell you what. But gosh, it was one of those, because you watch it, and you're saying, well, if Texas wins, gives Oklahoma a lot, you get in your mind with that, and then I threw all that away, and I was just like, this is just a phenomenal football game. I'm going to sit back and just watch the offenses explode. So, no, you guys did a great job. Thanks for having me on, though.
All right, my friend, be safe and good luck the rest of the way.
Awesome. Thank you so much, guys. Have a good one.
All righty. That was Brent Young, a contributor for the BearcatJournal.com and sports broadcaster for Indiana SRN.org. We're going to take a quick station break, both Zach and myself, to allow everyone to identify themselves, and we'll be back in about 15 seconds. You are watching Frankly Speaking Sports, live from Charlotte, North Carolina. Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to College Football Tuesday. I'm Larry Frank, along with Zach McKinnell, and another great interview with another top 5 school. Trying to get somebody every week for you that's having a terrific season. And, Cincinnati is definitely one of those teams. And we're going to talk, we've already talked about them. They play UCF this week. Zach, I don't see much of an issue there, do you?
No, I think they should win that fairly convincingly, especially with how inconsistent UCF has played and all the injuries they have. I would have Cincinnati pretty much mark this weekend.
All righty. Let's go ahead and we'll break down some of the games this week. Once again, these games are not in any specific order of importance. So I just want to make sure the fans, if they say, why is this game first, not this one? We just pick the games that we think are interested. And then at the end, Zach has a couple of other games. But Zach, obviously the first game that everyone is talking about it's a battle of undefeated. Kentucky, who's been having an outstanding year, playing the number 1 Georgia. And, this is a game where I'm not going to lie. I don't want to, mislead Kentucky fans, but Georgia is definitely right now, when you look at this game, a much better team, especially on the defensive side of the ball. And some of the things that I noted here is, can Chris Rodriguez Jr. run versus the defense of Georgia? That's going to be a key in this game, number 1. Number 2, I don't know if it's Levi's or Levis, the quarterback.
It's Levis.
That's what I had it to, as Levis.
Yeah.
Okay. He doesn't throw doesn't throw for a lot of yardage. And then can Georgia contain Wan'Dale Robinson, who has 37 receptions, 527 yards, and 4 touchdowns? That's some of the points I had. The other thing I had was, how will Georgia quarterback Stetson Bennett play? Because you and I both know Georgia hasn't really rushed much this year for yardage. So when I look at this game, the only way I see Kentucky being able to even challenge them is if they can get their running game going with Rodriguez.
Yeah, they gotta run the football, man. If they put this game strictly on Will Levis, they're going to get absolutely demolished. They're gonna have to run the ball. I said at least 150 yards, which sounds like a trillion yards when you have this Georgia defense only giving up like 60 per game. But Levis hasn't shown that he can carry this offense without a run game. This offensive line is going to have to protect him when he has to throw the ball. Wan'Dale Robinson's got to have some plays out in space where he can make plays against this Georgia secondary. And we know what Georgia's going to do, man. They're going to run the football. They're going to set up the play action for Stetson Bennett, and they're going to make it a physical, quick, sloppy game, and they're going to get out with the win. The keys to Georgia is the same. Just control the clock, don't turn the ball over, and let your defense go make plays. That's the recipe for success for Georgia. That's how talented they are on the defensive side of the ball. The worst thing for Kentucky is you don't have a quarterback who I trust not to turn the ball over. Levis has struggled with turnovers down the field right now for Kentucky. So for me, this is a terrible matchup for Kentucky. And until there's a team where their strength is to push the ball down the field passing, I just don't see a team coming into Athens, running the football it solely and winning a game. I have Georgia winning this one, man. And I have them winning probably fairly convincingly over Kentucky this weekend.
Yeah, and I agree 100% with you. Although I would love to see the alternative happen, I see Georgia winning this one as well. And then your boys play home this weekend versus an Arkansas team that has lost 2 in a row. But like you said, what the heck's going on with that offense? 51 points last week. Williams has been doing Jefferson has been playing unbelievable. And, the question I say with Auburn is, where has Jacquez Hunter been? I mean, if they have any chance to keep this game competitive, he's going to have to show up this weekend, doesn't he?
Yeah, Jarquez, Tank Bigsby, Sean Shivers, all the running backs have to show up. They ran for like 28 yards last week against Georgia. They're going to have to put up probably 200 yards rushing or more against Arkansas this weekend. They cannot allow Arkansas to run the football, control the pace of the game, and wear down that front seven. Auburn's been stout against the run for most of the season. They had that hiccup against Georgia State where their 2 starting linebackers were both out of the game. So for me, can Auburn stop the run is the biggest thing. Put it on Jefferson's arms to make plays down the field with Traylon Burks and that wide receiving core. So Auburn has to stop the run. And on the flip side, Bo Nix has to be more consistent, man. Can the offensive line protect him at all? That's the question of the game, man. But right now, out of all the teams Auburn's faced, I feel like they match up the best with Arkansas. And I don't know how Ruck going to be 11 either. I actually have Auburn, as of right now, winning a close game over Arkansas this weekend.
Yeah, and if I'm correct, and tell me if I'm mistaken, but isn't Bo Nix, I think he's thrown 1 touchdown pass in the last 4 games? Is that accurate?
Yeah, that would be accurate. He threw the one against LSU, and then he didn't have one against Georgia State, and he didn't have one last week against Georgia.
So wow, you'll be nice to see him do something in this game as well. We move on. Number 22. This game doesn't get a lot of attention, but this, NC State ACC matchup. I really think that as long as NC State can find a way to contain Pat Garlow III, they're going to win this game. If they don't, it's going to be a close game. but I think NC State is a better team than Boston College. I mean, of course, Devin Leary, they got to give him some time to throw the ball. He can't be rushed, but I still think NC State wins this game. I'm not sold on Grosel, the quarterback for Boston College, to put it in his hands. So I really think the key to NC State is stop that powerful running game of Boston College.
I agree, and I think it's up to Zonovan Knight and Person Jr. at the running back spot for NC State to go out and make plays. It can Devin Leary repeat that amazing performance that he had against Clemson and that he's had throughout his career. Can that NC State offense step up? Because I think the defense is going to be there. I have NC State winning this one in a close one, but I think this is one of those huge games that's really going to determine who comes out in the ACC in Charlotte to have a chance to win the title. But I got NC State just because I think they're a better overall team, and I trust Leary over the quarterback for Boston College.
Now, I don't know if I'm going to surprise you or not here, but I'm going to give you my input on this next game. You got Oklahoma State versus Texas, and I'm going to tell everybody right now, Texas is a better team than Oklahoma State. I don't care what the 4-2 record says. I don't care what the damn rankings say. This Texas team has lost 2 tough games. I mean, they put up 48 points against Oklahoma. Bijan Robinson, 5 of 6 games over 100 yards. Klay Thompson to Xavier Worthy seems to be happening. But the other reason is if you look at Oklahoma, they beat Boise State barely. They barely beat Tulsa, and they barely beat Missouri State. Maybe you can say something Tulsa's played tough this year, but those aren't 3 powerhouse teams, and you're barely winning. I'm telling you what, if Texas comes out like they did versus Oklahoma last weekend, they will run away with this game.
Yeah, so we actually previewed this game on our channel today. We dropped the episode. I have Texas winning this game. I've been winning a close one, especially with this being in Austin. I had this game 37-34. Texas winning this one. I just trust Bijan Robinson, Xavier Worthy, Joshua Moore, and Casey Thompson to go make plays. And what I said is if this game's a shootout, Texas has by far the advantage because they can put up points a lot easier than Oklahoma State. If Oklahoma State turns this into a beat-down, drag-out fight, it's probably going to lean toward Oklahoma State. I trust this Texas offense to be able to put up points at home against a defense that has some major injuries on the Oklahoma State side. So for me, I got Texas pulling out a 3-point win over Oklahoma State. And the bookies agree with you, man. Texas is a 5.5-point favorite over Oklahoma State right now. So a lot of people agree that Texas is the better team right this second.
Now, I know it's hypothetical, but let's just say Texas does win. Let's say they win convincingly. What does that do for the top 4 now?
Well, for the top 4, probably not much. What it would do is probably add to Oklahoma's win and probably give them a resume booster. Oklahoma State's sitting at number 12.
Yeah, I don't know why that says number 2 over there. It is 12. It's typo.
Yeah, they're sitting at 12, so they're kind of on like the outskirts. And what it would do is completely demolish any playoff hopes that Oklahoma State probably has. And what it would do is give Steve Sarkisian his first ranked win as the head coach of Texas and give them some positive momentum as they look to try to claim that second spot in Dallas and maybe get a big rematch with Oklahoma to try to win the 12.
All right. Now I got 3 what I call, at-large games. I didn't write any notes on these. You talked about one of them. The other 2 I just picked that I thought could be just matchups to watch. The first one you mentioned earlier, BYU versus Baylor. I don't have BYU, but they're 5-1 as well, BYU. How do you see this game? BYU's been surprising us all year long. Baylor, we talked about, have a tougher second half schedule. Begins with BYU than they did the first. Is this where we find out if Baylor's really that good or if it's just been the competition they've been playing?
Yeah, it's going to be their biggest test, in my opinion. They suffered a tough loss to Boise State last week in a big upset because they were 10th in the country last week. So that Boise State loss arguably cost them a shot at a New Year's Six bowl. So this is a big rebound game for BYU. What they're going to have to do is put up points and put pressure on this Baylor offense to score. The one game we saw Baylor lose was to Oklahoma State, and what they did is put pressure on the passing game. They shut down the running game, said, you've got to throw on us, and Baylor couldn't deliver. So for me, just looking at the matchup, I think BYU squeaks this one out against Baylor in a very, very close matchup.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. Another intriguing game, and I was going through the FBS, and I said, and I kept going back to this. And I, passed it, then I kept going back to it. And I think you might agree. This Appalachian State versus Louisiana Lafayette could be one heck of a game.
It's going on right now. It's a Tuesday night game. It's
that's
in
right.
the third quarter.
And I don't know the score. I don't have an update.
The Louisiana Lafayette is winning 27-13 over App State right now.
Wow. See, I thought it was Thursday night game. So.
No, it's that weird Tuesday night, I guess, Sun Belt game for some reason. But yeah, it's 27-13. Louisiana's leading right now.
All right, you heard it first on College Football Tuesday. So we'll skip that one for argument's sake here. And the other game that I picked, and it's just one of those games, Pittsburgh versus Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech, they're 3-2, but they're not a terrible team. How do you see this one playing out?
Yeah, I like Pitt in this one. I think Kenny Pickett has been the most underrated quarterback in the country. I think that offense is going to be able to put some points up on Virginia Tech. And Virginia Tech has just been so inconsistent in terms of a pass rush and playing solid defense. I have Pitt in this one. I think they could win by probably 7 to 10 points this weekend. I just trust Kenny Pickett to go out and make a play more so than I trust the Virginia Tech offense to get some points on the board.
Yeah, and I took Pittsburgh in this one too, only because they're playing good football right now. Are there any games that you can think of besides some of the ones we mentioned that maybe folks should keep an eye on this weekend?
Yeah, this one might surprise you. Tennessee Ole Miss at 6:30 on SEC Network. Tennessee has shocked a lot of people, man. Sitting at 4-2, they're averaging over 40 points per game. They're playing solid defense. They scored 62 points on Missouri on the road 2 weeks ago. Yep. They put up 45 against South Carolina. Their two losses are to Pitt, pretty good loss, and Florida. So those are the two teams they've lost to. I think they match up very well with Ole Miss. And on top of that, they're doing the checkered game in Knoxville, Tennessee, in Neyland Stadium. That environment is going to be electric. I think you have to put the Rebels on upset alert, coming off an emotional, hard-fought physical win over Arkansas. Look out for the Volunteers to potentially pull off the big upset.
All right, so we got your upset pick of the week there. Well, I guess we're just about ready to wrap it up. We've had a great show again. First of all, we want to thank Brent Young from the BearcatJournal.com for joining us to talk about Cincinnati and their great start to this season. They're in one of those teams fighting for a playoff spot, and they pretty much control their own destiny now. They do have I don't say an easy road because nothing's easy in college football. They do have SMU, who's right now undefeated, so it is a possibility when that game is played toward the latter part of the year that both those teams could be undefeated at that time. So that should be an interesting game. But we want to thank you all for joining us today. We really appreciate it. For those of you that are going to be watching this on the replay, if you can do us a favor, share this to your timeline as we continue to grow each and every week. We appreciate you tuning in. On behalf of myself, Zach McKinnell, until next week, good night.